this is Sarah Scopic, and you're watching Traffic Musings. Oh, hold up. Sorry guys, 1 second. There's a police car, and I don't want to get in trouble for filming while I'm driving. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm starting to get a little bit sick. My throat feels kind of scratchy, but I don't think it's quite gotten to the point where you can really tell in my voice yet. I don't really get colds often as much as I used to anymore. If anything, I just get the lovely throat and ear infections. Thankfully, that's nice though, because all I usually really need is once it starts blowing up, I just get some amoxicillin and it knocks it right out. The problem, of course, is that I can tell it's happening and I know it's gonna flare up, but there's nothing they can really, or should really do about it yet. They need to wait till it gets actually like bad and, you know, bacterial infection. So I have to go through so many stupid like symptoms, all while being like, I know where you should check, just check it, just give you amoxicillin, and just go on from there. Actually, maybe I'll tell you guys the story about my ear infections. Sorry guys, Gabby is gonna do what Gabby does best. Maybe I'll tell you guys about my ear infections and that lovely story. It's pretty relevant to everything I do, and I think it's kind of had some pretty profound effect on me on how I do things. So when I was born, I was a beautiful little cute little baby, and everything seemed totally normal. I walked on time, I crawled on time, I did all that stuff. I even kind of spoke my first words on time. But soon something weird seemed to be very apparent about me. I would speak, but when I spoke, my words were kind of weird. They didn't really make a lot of sense. And on top of that, I was constantly screaming and crying for no apparent reason. And I was known for just shouting, no, 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 as I would practically just be beside myself on the floor. And my parents had no idea what was going on. My symptoms of the time of the understanding of autism and stuff like that seemed to kind of reflect that a little bit, but they weren't exactly sure. My mother took me to, I believe, a child psychologist or something to have me tested because this was weird. I was at first seemed to be fine, and all of a sudden I was getting upset all the time, and my speech was off and such like that. Well, I was also an extremely stubborn child, and so when they tried to test me, I would kind of refuse to do whatever they asked me to do. The lady came back to my mother and reported that I was diagnosed with a learning disability of reading and writing, and I would never be able to read and write at a level, be able basically to really learn to read and write at a functional level ever. So my mother thought that was ridiculous. And had no idea where that came from because it didn't seem to be the issue. So bless her heart, she went to get a second opinion from a medical doctor, just wondering, you know, what on earth could possibly be wrong. And the doctor, kind of thinking this through a little bit better than the child psychologist, checked my ears. It turned out I had such an insane amount of fluid in my ears that I had a double ear infection, a really bad one, and was practically deaf. So if you think about it, if you try to speak to someone who can barely hear you, like I wasn't completely deaf, I could still hear some things, but imagine, you know, this is how you're learning about the world, this is the sounds that you're learning as a child, someone speaks to you, and you're learning it, and your output is what you're hearing, but it's not what they said, which is basically what happened. In essence, I kind of made up my own language, which is kind of cool. I apparently had different nicknames for certain people because when they would teach me their names, the output I gave was something very different. Mama and Dada I got, but for example, Grandma was Maka. That was my name for her. I don't know how I heard that, but that's what I heard. I had to get tubes like a lot of kids that age because I was kind of right at this cusp of them realizing that, people can be born with fluid in their ears. That's a thing. And so tubes were kind of in the rage that day. And also my screaming and crying was because, I don't know if you guys have ever had an ear infection. It's really painful, ridiculously painful. It's awful. I had one not too long ago, like about 3 or 4 years ago, and because I hadn't had one in a very long time. And I remember, as I was trying to get treated, thinking, no wonder I screamed and cried. Like, this is just with one ear. I had it with both ears as a child. I was obviously not a happy camper. The worst part about ear infections is they feel like throat infections because you're nasal through your throat. And so it feels like it's in your throat. but there's nothing you can do to relieve it. So you'll take lozenges or whatever, cough drops, and it doesn't do anything because it's not in your throat, but it feels like it's in your throat. And so it's just this horrible feeling that you can't relieve. As a result of being diagnosed with a learning disability in reading and writing, however, I had to go to a lot of special education classes and speech therapy, which the problem was that, so they diagnosed me with learning disability when I was quite young, and they got the tubes in my ears. My mother can correct me. In fact, my mother watches these now, and she's going to, like, correct me after this, going, this is how it happened, because I can never keep the story straight. But anyway, I had the tubes in my ears, but they still had the diagnosis. Back then, for some reason, they did not review those plans until, like, every 2 years or so, which is weird because I've been talking with other people work in schools, and the way that this was handled apparently for me was not correct. They're supposed to reevaluate these kinds of plans, individualized education plans as they're called, IEPs, pretty much every year to see if they're true. However, I have also noticed that nowadays, when there's a problem when there seems to be an issue with a student, they check your hearing first. So at least they do that now. It was just very strange, and so as a result, I was forced into reading and speech therapy for 3 years, I think. Speech, I think I only had to do it for 2. But reading, I was forced to do it for, I think, 3 years. And I remember those classes because the problem is that after I had gotten the tubes right on time as far as, like, learning with speech, so that I actually was able to really quickly relearn how to talk and such like that. And so within, like, a year, I was able to talk and function. I was learning at a rate of a normal child. And in fact, it turned out I was quite good at reading and speech. And so the problem was that when I went into elementary school, I still was forced into these programs, but I didn't really need them at that point. So I still remember being in speech therapy, and I could tell that the speech therapist was trying to nitpick at me with something, trying to fulfill her goals, even though I didn't really have anything wrong at that point. And I remember getting so frustrated because she would give, like, I remember she would let, some of the other students make certain little mistakes, but she was so critical of me because she had to find mistakes, and it was so irritating. The reading teacher, bless her heart, she realized very early on that I did not need help, and in fact, reading was one of my strongest points. I was actually kind of a bit more advanced for my age, rather ironically, than underdeveloped. And so she actually turned my, solitary reading help into an advanced reading course. And so I actually got to have a couple of friends of mine. In fact, one of my oldest best friends that I'm still friends with today was in that class with me all the way from elementary school. She turned to an advanced reading course because that's what honestly helped me more, was being able to go more above and beyond. I really appreciate all of the teachers in my elementary school because they could see that something was different, something was not right as far as what, this is what was officially stated, but this is what they're seeing, and so they had to learn to work with what they had. Double ear infections suck. I haven't done these in a while. My non-recommendation, I do not recommend having a double ear infection, especially as a child. It's not good. You scream and cry a lot, you may be partially deaf and not learning the things you need to learn, and it's just painful. It is horribly painful. If I were to have an autobiography, that would be like my thing of, oh, look how such an inspiration I am. I was born with this, and then all of a sudden I became this. The reason I never really thought of it that way is because it happened so long ago. Like, I remember going through with it, but now, I'm 23, guys. That was so long ago. And yeah, it's had some impact, but at the same time, it's one of those things I just don't even really, I never really thought about until people brought it up of like, oh yeah, you had this and then you came out this way, and well, what a blessing, blah, blah, and it's just kind of funny to hear that. I better let you guys go before this goes overtime. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope something amazing happens to you. And without further ado, I hope to see you all in the next episode. Bye!